Ancient technologies, rockin' and rollin'. So this was sparked up by a comment, on a Reddit thread. Had a back and forth with a couple people, but one person in particular, I put out the idea that is like, the the stones used for like the pyramids of Giza or just any monolith structure, right? Not monolith, well, yeah, monolith and megalith, whatever, doesn't matter either one. The stones probably weren't flat, like they weren't rectangular or square before they got to their destination to be used. What if, this is where the theory came from, right? What if they were round? Because part of the argument was there was a video that was showing an example of moving things. Let's try to show it a little bit. Moving things, right? Moving these big tree logs and trying to move them and put them on top of a big rig or like a flatbed, truck to try to transport. And how this could be a method used for, in Egypt, for example. So then people were, of course, pointing out that those logs are round, not square or flat. So they're not blocks, they're round. So then that started, like I said, in the comments, I pointed out the fact that it's like, what if they started off round? Why not? Why make it blocky, right? Make it flat, and then try to transport it with another thing, right? Like, it would be more logical to roll it, right? To your desk, from one location to the next, right? Because that's what wheels do, right? Wheels spin, they roll, right? You wouldn't make a square wheel unless you really need a square wheel, but that's for a different conversation, different video, right? You will make a circular wheel, right? A round wheel, so you can move it, right? So it can move. So why wouldn't you do that same thing for building materials? Especially if you have the ability to cut stone into whatever shape you need for whatever you're building. Why not start off round so you can roll the material around, right? And once you get the material, right, the stone from point A to point B, once you get to point B, then cut it there. You should have tools, right? Cut it there into the shape you need and then work with it, right? Work smarter, not harder, which is what I believe ancient humans, that's their mindset, which was work smarter, not harder. So why would you deliberately cut something flat and hard to move? I'm just thinking logically. So then, some people will be like, oh, but no, but we only seen like the blocks being square or whatever. There's no proof of them being round or anything like that, right? Some people might say that. No one said that yet, but that's probably some people's mindsets that the blocks have always been, flat, never been round, none of this. So it's like, okay, well, here's something interesting, right? That's the point of this video, because it made me think it's like there's this specific site. It's some cave in Italy or something. They call it cave something. Where, as you can see in this image, we have a core from a core drill or a drill hole, which is core 7. Most of y'all would know this one, from a tubular drill. So it's a tubular drill hole, right? Now look at this. Some images of a giant, about, let's say this chick we here in the picture on the far right, let's say she's 5'2". Most females on average are 5'2". So she's about 5. Let's round it down to 5 feet. So this looks like it's 3 times taller than her, so 15 feet. So it's a 15-foot core, round cylinder, right? It's a giant drill core, 15-foot drill core. And essentially there's 4. Well, 3, because 1 was clearly taken out, in this far top right image. So there's 3 cores still in its location. Still 3 of them in the location, 1 has been moved. And of course you're like, where is it? Well, there's some that are around, right? And down here you see there's an image of one of the cores, a core. Might not be the core that was originally in that spot, but it's a core that is on its side, and they put a square. They chiseled a square hole in the middle, which means they're more likely going to put a wooden, piece of wood in there, which will allow them to be able to roll this core. I call it core. This core, right? Right next to it, there's an image of again, looks like a big core, right? A big you want to call it a pillar, big round pillar, which also has the square hole on one side, but then has all these cuts. Even has like some circular tube drills, or maybe those are just breaks. Point is, looks like they're cutting it. So there's a tube-like, right? There's a cylinder-like rock in Egypt, and it has cuts, and that's, like I said, that little square on the side gives the impression that they're going to stick something there to allow this thing to roll, so they can roll it. And they could put whatever they want there. It could be a way to mount it to something that's going to pull it. So this is just a way to help it. So the fact that something like this exists is like, why do they have this shape, a big giant drill core essentially, right? Why do they have this big cylinder that's not being used as a pillar? Maybe it once was a pillar, right? Maybe that's the goal, is for it to be a pillar, right? Whatever. Point is, currently it's chopped up. Somebody was hacking at it. So when I thought about the theory of like, the material is round, you roll it to where you want the material to be, and then you chop it up once you get there, and then you use it to build stuff. Then I thought about this location that has giant drill cores, right? And then I remembered that image of that, what looks like a giant drill core, right? Cut up, like something cut it, right? So put that together, is like, aha, this sounds like the theory, right? This sounds like the theory that I was proposing, which was, what if the materials, the blocks in the Great Pyramids of Giza started off round? Once you got to where the pyramid's at, right, to the plaza, Giza Plaza, right, then you chopped it up and then used the materials, right? So there's that. There's the drill core, so let's get out of there. So another thing was the idea of, it's like, oh, but they're squares, they're blocked, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, let's assume that they were never circular, right? Never round. You can make something square, right? Something flat, and make it round, right? By adding wheels to it. Now, my idea is that it already is a wheel, and you take advantage of the fact it's already a wheel, move it to the location you want to move it to, and then hack it down into a flat surface. But here, you could turn something square into something round, which would be to put, you could use like wood, for example, and put wooden wheels, and attach it to the structure. You see, I can zoom down a little bit there. You can attach wood, right? Attach wooden wheels to them, and then now you can roll them. You roll them around, right? Or you can create like wagons, like I believe, like they created wagons, right? Those sleds, some people know about the sleds. Well, they could always put wheels on the sleds. I'm just saying, right? put the wheels on the sleds, right? And then put the stones on the wheel. I mean, on the sled, and then wheel it around. Just saying. Think about it, right? Like you see right here on this image right here where it says A, figure A. You see how it's a big cylinder. See how it has this little axle stuff. So now they could put this little frame thing around it, which acts like an axle, attach some ropes to it, and then pull it. And now you can roll, just like you see on this image up here. You have people in the back pushing and people in the front pulling. And now you can pull, and then you can go up hills and stuff like that, right? Slopes and stuff. Now you can push and pull and roll. That's the main thing. You can roll the stuff. So it's just something to think about. Like I said, and I always did like the idea of put wheels on the stone, and that's one of the quickest way you can move stone around is by putting it on a wheel, right? The wheel, one, because of its arc shape, can support a lot of weight. It can distribute a lot of weight. That's why we use wheels, obviously, on cars and stuff like that. Cars already weigh 2 tons, and the wheels, think about it, it's just filled with air. It's rubber with air, yet somehow it's able to handle 2 tons, right? You can say technically it's handling 500 pounds each tire, but you get the idea, right? The more wheels you try to add to the block, the more weight it can hold. Obviously, you won't put just 2 wheels on a 100-ton, block. You put a whole bunch of wheels, right, and move it that way. The point is, as long as you can roll it, that's what matters. So that's something to take into consideration. And it seems plausible. That's the thing. It seems plausible. Even if you're like, oh, they didn't do that. Well, it seems plausible. I mean, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. I would use that method. That's all I'm saying. I would use that method. And it's a very practical method. It's not like I need a big machine. I don't need a big crane. I don't need a dump truck. I don't need, I don't need modern day technology, as it were, to do something like this. A wheel is pretty simple. It's pretty basic. So, as you can see over here, here's some other possibilities of what these cores were for, that they possibly could have been used for. Like this image right here, this kind of looks like the same type of material that this rock material is. So I noticed the similarity on the side of this looks a lot like the side of this. I'm like, maybe that's what it's for. Maybe these big drill cores are going to be put onto the side, cut down in half, right? Cut into slices, and then you can have a whole bunch of wheels. Then they're just going to roll it to wherever they need to roll it to, right? Just like over here. Because when you look at some other stuff, you see there's like big wheels in these images. Like there's this big wheel here, and then it has this little wheel on top of it. So it's like, well, how else are you going to get big, round, cylinder-like wheels? How are you going to get these big wheels unless you have a big drill core and you just cut into pieces, right, into slices, and created these things? So, that's the idea. How else did they do this unless they made big drill cores, right? Not just small ones, big ones as well. I mean, big enough that you got a 15-foot one, that's bigger than, very big. And it's funny because I was doing a little research into just core drilling, and then when I found out about this place where they literally had these big giant drill cores, I'm like, well, one, that makes it easier to look at the striations, try to figure out the technique, maybe figure out the method, the technology, the strategy. Did they use technology, right? Like more advanced than copper chisels and hammers, right? To do this, I'm like, this is pretty big. You can't tell me this was done with copper chisels and hammers, even though, as you can see down there on the far left bottom, there's a depiction of people with pickaxes and chisels and hammers, essentially creating this giant 15-foot drill core. Possible? Yeah. Likely? Nah. I think they used a different method. And that's what I'm interested in. What was the different method that they used? Right? Still working on it. one interesting thing that I thought about was the fact that it's like, oops, that this definitely was not a giant. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is not the image. Yeah, that's the image. Right here on this big one. This is the main one that started giving me some ideas of how they did it. Alright, they definitely didn't use a big giant tube drill. Right, they didn't have a big copper tube and sand and water and try to do this. Now you could say they technically did, but I mean that's a lot of copper, right? It's more like he was using a different method, which I'll talk about it some other time. But something I did notice is like, well, for them to do this, right, and to go all the way down from the top to bottom, right, I was like, well, they kind of have to have like a ramp, like they need to ramp down. Which, if you look at this image right here to the far left of the picture, you see what it looks like a downward slope, and then it comes down, and then it flattens and go around to the other side and flattens again. So it looks like you can walk down the middle all the way to the bottom. So it looks like they're trying to create a stairway, a spiral staircase, basically, out of the rock, while cutting out the big core at the same time. And then they start hacking away at the from the top bottom, right? They start hacking away. Once they get far down enough, right? Then they'll be like, all right, let's start hacking away the what is it called? The spiral track. And then they'll go down and down, and there's some extra stuff. Not go into the full details of that. That's for a future video. But it's like, oh, okay, that's what they did. They spiraled down. They went down a spiral. Further proof of a spiral. So, like I said, the last thing here is you look right here on the side of the side of the walls, but also the side of the core. You see what it looks like spiral, or at least looks like curved lines, striations right on the core, and it looks like it's spiraling around to the bottom. So obviously that looks like that's what they did. They just made a spiral, right? They made a spiral ramp down with the material. That's why they created two lines. That way they can fit, as you can see, like her, they can fit in between the core and the sides of where the core is at, so that way they can fit in there and keep cutting, keep going down all the way down to the bottom, and then eventually hack away at the bottom, right? And then do some leverage stuff and then knock this out. More likely knock it over to the dirt. Then they might put some like sandbags or something just to prevent this from breaking and whatnot once they knock it over. But then after that, they roll it to where they want to roll it to and do whatever they want to do, right? So I think that's all I got to say about that. Yeah, I don't have pictures of anything else. Just wanted to point that out. Hopefully that's useful, at least an interesting theory, something to work on, right? Regardless of, because somebody did try to throw some shade at me with the whole like, oh, you're just doing voiceover on some other people's stuff and whatnot, and it's like, I'm just looking for some, information that helps me with some of my theories, some of my ideas, because I think of what ancient humans could do, or at least what I would do if I was living in the past, and then like figure out like, okay, would I do this? Would I do that? And whatever seems the easiest, most plausible, then I'm go do some Google searching and see if I can find any evidence of that, right? See if there's anything that looks like maybe that's what happened, and then propose the idea, right? You could say they're theories. I'm fine with that, since we don't have a time machine to go back in time and prove me right? All I could do is show proof the best I can, which is Google, right? I'm busy working. I don't have time to travel around the world and take pictures or videos and stuff like that to show you these locations. I could just Google is awesome just for the fact that I can just go find pictures and videos, right, to showcase what I'm talking about. If you want more than that, well, go do your own research. I'm just showing you, what I got so far based off of the time I spent on getting some information just for the idea. Maybe you want to just call this a theory, then that's fine. I got no problem with that. Like I said, this video just came from a comment, just pointing out the fact is like, what if y'all complained that the example, like, oh, but they're using logs and they're round, and that's not a good example for moving heavy objects when the stones are square, blah blah blah, that the Egyptians or whoever build monoliths used. I'm like, okay, but what if they weren't square? What if they were round at first? To make it easier to transport them, then they were turned into flat, right? They were flattened out at the work site. I mean, that's what I would do. That would make working easier. That would make the job easier. And here's some proof that maybe that's what they did do. This place is in Italy, right? You could be like, oh, that doesn't count because that wasn't in Egypt and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, whatever. Y'all wanna complain or argue? All right, go ahead. Come up with a better theory, prove me wrong, whatever. I don't care. That's fine. The whole idea is to put the idea out there for y'all to, think about it. See if, maybe you can find some more proof or find a way to disprove it. Right? For now, this is right until it's wrong. I'm from an older generation where, somebody's right until you prove them wrong. They're not wrong just because you feel like they're wrong or you want them to wrong. That's ignorance. They're right until you prove them wrong, right? The proof of information being wrong is not on the person who gave the information in the first place. It's on the person who received the information. So if I give you advice, it's on to you. It's up to you to prove if my advice was wrong, was good or bad. It's not up to me to prove that my advice is good or bad. It's up to you to prove that my advice is good or bad, right? By you trying it out, by you taking my advice. That's why it's called taking advice. You take it, run with it, and see what happens. So I made this video. I'm giving it to y'all. Run with it. See what y'all find. See what y'all can do with it. Prove me right, prove me wrong. Let's find out.